Welcome back. When we last left Elara, her simple basket of food had crossed the threshold of 4C, accepted but unanswered. The silence still stood, but now it carried a spark. What would happen if that spark caught? Part 2 begins with the first ripple, the faint echo of connection. The silence from 4C remained, but Elara began to notice subtle shifts, like tremors beneath the surface. The mail was collected more regularly. The discarded takeout bags vanished promptly. Once, very early in the morning, she glimpsed Aiden returning, not slumped, but walking with a fraction more purpose, a reusable grocery bag in hand, the kind she often used. Had her basket prompted this small step back towards self-care? The heavy, late-night pacing became less frequent, replaced by stretches of a different, less oppressive quiet. Elara maintained her gentle vigilance. She'd time her evening tea to coincide with when she heard his door unlock after work. She'd learned the distinct sound of his key. Standing in her doorway as if checking her own mail, she'd offer a soft, evening. For weeks, it was met with the familiar curt nod, eyes fixed on the floor. But one rain-lashed Thursday, something changed. Elara spoke her quiet greeting. Aiden, head down, hand already on his doorknob, paused. Not a long pause, but a definite hesitation. His shoulders seemed to tense, then release slightly. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his head lifted a fraction. His eyes, still shadowed and weary, flickered towards her. Not meeting her gaze directly, but acknowledging her presence in the space beside him. It lasted only a second. Then, a sound emerged, low, rough, barely more than an exhale. It wasn't a word. It wasn't even clearly hi. But it was a sound directed at her. An attempt. Immediately after, he wrenched his door open and disappeared inside, closing it swiftly behind him. Elara stood frozen in her doorway, the sound of the rain suddenly loud again. Her heart hammered, not with fear, but with a profound, swelling emotion. It wasn't joy, exactly, but a fierce, quiet triumph. That rough, almost inaudible sound was a chink in the armor, a tiny breach in the fortress wall. He hadn't just taken the basket. He had responded. The silence hadn't broken, but it had bent, just for a fleeting moment, allowing a sliver of human connection to slip through. The persistent drip of kindness, it seemed, could eventually wear down even the hardest stone. Elara closed her own door softly, a small, warm certainty settling within her. The battle wasn't won, but the first real contact had been made. The man in 4C was not beyond reach. Elara's consistent, patient kindness, a fresh loaf when the basket is empty, holding the building door open without comment, noticing he reads mystery novels and leaving a well-regarded one anonymously outside his door, gradually builds a fragile bridge. Tentative, awkward conversations begin in the hallway. We learn fragments of Aiden's burden, a devastating professional failure combined with a profound personal loss that broke him. Elara listens without pushing, offering quiet support, her apartment becoming a safe harbor for brief, shared silences over tea. She helps him navigate practicalities he'd neglected. The city's indifference continues around them, but within the microcosm of Sycamore Street, a bond forms, built on Elara's unwavering empathy and Aiden's hesitant steps back towards the world. The narrative explores the challenges, setbacks where Aiden retreats, moments when Elara's own resilience is tested, the skepticism of other neighbors. Years later, autumn painted Meridian in fiery hues. The relentless ambition still pulsed, but on Sycamore Street, a different energy hummed. Elara sat in her armchair, sunlight warming her face. The rhythmic tap-tap of a keyboard came from the small desk where Aiden worked, freelance consulting now, a quieter path he'd forged. The frantic pacing above was a distant memory, replaced by the comfortable sounds of shared life. He caught her eye and smiled, a genuine, warm expression that reached his eyes, now clear of that hollowed-out despair. "Tea," he offered, already rising. It was a simple ritual, born in those fragile early days of his recovery. Later, they walked through the park, crunching fallen leaves underfoot. They passed a young man sitting rigidly on a bench, staring blankly ahead, the weight of the world seemingly crushing his shoulders. Aiden slowed, his gaze lingering. Elara felt the echo of their own past in that solitary figure. Without a word, Aiden veered towards a nearby vendor, returning moments later with 2 steaming paper cups. He walked calmly to the bench and placed 1 cup beside the young man, just within his line of sight. "Long day," Aiden murmured, the words quiet but clear, an offering, not an intrusion. Then he simply turned and rejoined Elara, continuing their walk. The young man didn't look up, didn't touch the cup immediately, but as they glanced back, they saw his hand slowly reach out, wrapping around the warmth. Elara slipped her hand into Aiden's. They walked in comfortable silence, the city's noise a backdrop to their quiet connection. She thought of the crushing silence she'd once battled, the despair that had seemed impenetrable. What happened when kindness met that silence? It didn't always roar. It didn't always fix. Sometimes, it was a basket left in the dark. Sometimes, it was a shared cup of tea in safe silence. Sometimes, it was simply showing up, day after day, offering presence without demand. It was the persistent drip of empathy, wearing down the walls of isolation, proving that even the deepest silence could hold the echo of connection. It wasn't a grand victory, but a quiet, enduring testament. In the race of ambition, the slow, steady pulse of kindness could carve its own indelible path, note by silent note, into the symphony of human lives. Meridian raced on, but on Sycamore Street, they walked slowly, side by side, their shared silence a language richer than words. Years later, Meridian still pulsed with the same restless ambition, but Sycamore Street seemed to hum in a softer key. The florist downstairs had painted her shopfront a cheerful green, and Mrs. Gable's geraniums now bloomed defiantly in the window, cared for by more than one neighbor's hand. Elara and Aiden's days flowed in a rhythm they had built together. Slow breakfasts by the window, shared glances over the rim of tea mugs, the unspoken understanding that not all healing was loud or visible. They never spoke of what if or back then more than necessary. The past was still there, but it no longer defined the space between them. Instead, that space was filled with presence, the kind that had once saved them both in different ways. Every so often, they would notice someone, a stranger on the train, a neighbor in the hallway, a cashier with tired eyes, carrying a familiar heaviness. And without fanfare, they would act. A warm loaf wrapped in paper, a coffee left without a name, a smile held long enough to be felt. Meridian's noise roared on, but they knew the truth now. Silence is not always emptiness, and kindness is never wasted. The smallest gesture could be a seed, lying dormant until the right moment. And sometimes, all it took to begin was one person brave enough to water it. If this story resonated with you, let it be more than a moment's warmth. Look around. Someone near you might be living behind their own silent walls. A small gesture, offered without expectation, could be the crack that lets the light in. Share this story, and then, go start one of your own.